For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. National Planning Commissioner and Business Leadership South Africa chairperson Bobby Godsell joins me to discuss the 4-Hour Movement, a charter that encourages active citizenship in South Africa. When you moved on from your position as CEO in South Africa's mining industry, you stated that you'd like to give back to South Africa through increased public service activities. You've been true to your word as you have worked as a member of the National Planning Commission and now have launched an Active Citizens initiative. Do you believe you're having as much impact in this new role as you did in the private sector?
Well, look, about impact, I really don't know. It's not for me to judge. It's in a way, it's for others and perhaps history and ultimately God. What I would say is, look, I believe very passionately in business. I think to make money honestly and to use the wealth that is created through business in a constructive and fair way is a wonderful public service. So for me, the very best thing business people can do is to run their businesses successfully. I mean, they take resources, they combine resources, and they make more. They make more products, more goods, more services. They make the world a better place. And for me, that's a wonderful thing, and a large part of my life has been there. In addition, of course, every business person, man or woman, is also a citizen. And so as a citizen, you have a duty to your community, to your family, to your country. And so, you know, in this part of my life, I'm still serving on the boards of a number of companies, so I think I'm still very much involved with the sort of wealth creation process. But at Eskom, through the National Planning Commission, through initiatives like the New Growth Path, I've had the opportunity to serve my country as a citizen. That's a great privilege.
How can the Citizens Charter be an important vehicle for achieving both strong leaders and strong citizens?
Okay, well, let's just talk a little bit of the origins. You know, this is the child of an unusual friendship. James Motlatsi and I started our life as terrible adversaries. I mean, he founded the National Union of Mine Workers. I was the chief negotiator for Anglo-American in the 1980s. This was a very tough decade. It was a decade of bombs going off in shopping centres, of attacks on soft targets by the African National Congress and its military wing, of states of emergency, of the special branch arresting, detaining, beating up and killing people. This is a really tough decade. And in that, the struggle of NUM, as James often said, was not only to improve the lot of working people in the mining industry, but also to end apartheid. It had a very clear political agenda. So in the 80s, we were adversaries. And as the 80s came to an end and as political change came about, we discovered the capacity to cooperate. We cooperated on trying to serve the mining industry, on trying to oppose the central banks and the International Monetary Fund from selling gold and depressing the price of gold. And we campaigned in Washington and in London and in Bern in Switzerland together. I as the president of the Chamber of Mines, James as the president of the National Union of Mine Workers. On that dreadful Saturday morning when Chris Hani was assassinated, James was charged by the president of the ANC, Nelson Mandela, with organising the funeral for Chris Hani, which obviously was going to be a major national event. But James was in search of resources. And I'm pleased to say that as the president of the Chamber of Mines, we were able to agree to fund a large part of the cost of the funeral of the Secretary General of the South African Communist Party, an unusual thing for a mining organisation to do. And so we discovered some shared values as citizens. And then in 2008, we wrote a little book together, a book that's called Do It, Every Citizen's Opportunity to Make a Difference, or something like that. And, you know, our conviction was that in addition to good laws, good government, good political parties, which we are both believe in, I mean, we are both members of different political parties, we thought there was also much that citizens could do and should do and needed to do. You know, citizens in a constitutional democracy have a lot of rights, but they also have some responsibilities. They have the responsibility ultimately, in a way, to sweep their own backyard, to look after their family, their community, to be a good parent, to be interested in the education of their kids, to promote healthy lifestyles, to fight crime, absolutely to fight corruption. And so that's what the book is about. We did intend in the book to launch a movement to get people to subscribe to the values of responsible citizenship, and then to act those values out. And for a variety of reasons, it's taken us 5 years to getting around to doing that. But at the end of February, we started. We wrote to some 200 of our friends to say, we think this is a good idea. Would you join us? And I'm pleased to say about 130 of them have joined us. And so that's the origins of the movement.
How can active South African citizens overcome great problems?
Well, again, if you think about it, quite a large part of what happens in your life depends on you, more than it depends actually on governments. I mean, the reality is having a good family, a healthy, strong, sound family, a family that can deal with difference and maintain itself even through difficult times, really depends particularly on the parents, but also of the children. It depends on the integrity of the family. Living in a good community, we know in terms of preventing crime, by the way, that it's an active community, neighbors who watch out for each other. That's the origin of the concept of neighborhood watch. Neighbors who know each other, neighbors who haven't surrendered the streets to gangs and thieves. So community is an important thing about crime. Corruption ultimately starts not with the people who take the bribes, but the people who pay the bribes. And so a citizen who's trying to avoid a 500 Rand traffic fine by producing a 200 Rand note to give to the traffic officer, he's part of the corruption problem, not solving it. So in those areas, I would say honestly probably 80% of the reality that's really important. Finding a good school for your kid and making sure that the good school that you found stays a good school. Making sure that your kid studies hard. That means, very pedestrian things like checking your kid's homework. It means talking to your kid about what he's learnt at school, maybe reading to your kid, have your kid read to you, having books in the home. Books in the home, indeed, is one of the major correlators between school readiness and homes. So all of these things are things that people can and must do for themselves. You can't pass a law to say that there will be 5 books in the home. The parents have to buy them. So, that's the part of reality. And again, we're not letting government off the hook. I mean, James and I, as individuals and at times together, have campaigned for good laws, good politics, an end to corruption, good political leadership. And we'll do that again. But right now, we're saying to 51 million South Africans, a democracy is about the people governing. That's what we say. It's a republic is where the citizens govern. And we're saying, at least govern in your own backyard. And then you're so much more credible when you ask others to do what they should be doing.
What inspired you and James Motlatsi to begin the movement?
I think as we looked at, because again, if I look at the mining industry, though we needed the end of apartheid, and after the end of apartheid, we needed a good Labour Relations Act to make sure that the labour relations were good. We needed a minister and a government who would campaign for a mining industry that was, in our language, a sunrise industry, not a sunset industry. At the end of the day, so much of the destiny of the mining industry was in the hands of managers and unions. And that, by the way, remains absolutely true today. So, in our leadership capacity in the mining industry, we negotiated productivity agreements, we campaigned against violence, we wrote a set of rules about how workers could exercise the right to strike, but without violence and intimidation. And in looking at how, in a way, we'd been responsible mining citizens, as our careers in mining came to an end, we started to think that there was application for that in the broader society.
Why specifically did you settle on 4 hours of activity to promote active citizenry?
Look, there's no particularly profound reason for 4 hours. We asked ourselves, South Africans live busy lives, and for most South Africans, it's tough to get through the week and to do your work, keep your home, look after your kids, be responsible members of your community. But I guess what we said to ourselves is that for most of us, if we really try hard, we can find an hour a week. Some of us go to gym, for a bit more than that. Some of us go to movies once a week. Some of us go out to eat at a restaurant. So we thought an hour a week is a realistic expectation. And what we also thought, and we were keen to build a movement that changed the behaviour of, we hope thousands, we hope tens of thousands of South Africans. And for that we wanted something that was sustained. Not just, many of us participate in Mandela Day once a year, and that's a very good thing. In a way, we were trying to have a Mandela hour once a week. So it would become a natural part that, I need me time, I need family time, I need community time, I need citizen time. And that's part of a normal week.
How can citizens sign up and become involved in this initiative?
We are building a movement, not an organisation. So certainly I don't think as long as James and I will be around, there's not going to be a Citizen ZA building, nice fancy skyscraper in Sandton. We're also not actually fundraising for this. And it's not an organisation that has fancy titles and leadership structures. It's a movement that's coming from the bottom up. So in the digital age, the easiest way to sign up is to go to the website, which is simply citizens.za.com, and sign up on the website. That then puts you into a database, and what we're doing now is we're creating regional structures. Wherever there are 30 or 40 or 50 members together, we're bringing people together, having them elect a regional steering group. Also, we think quite often the kinds of things that we're encouraging people to do in the area, for example, of education or health or youth and employment or environmental sustainability or crime prevention, quite often it's easier to do something in this area together with other people. So in the database, we're able to group people, particularly by postal code or by township or suburb, squatter settlement, and say, here are 5 or 10 of you, why don't you work together? And this is beginning to happen. So you go into the website, you become part of the database, and then you have to take your time, your energy, and your resources, work with other people, and start to create, a different kind of community. This is about values. The charter that we've put out, and the charter will be a living document. We'll review it probably once a year with our Council of Patrons, but the charter starts with the preamble to our Constitution. It then looks at the importance of family and community. It looks at some very important things about handling money responsibly, not getting involved in too much debt, being a responsible road user. You know that half of the roughly 25,000 people who lose their lives every year in South Africa are pedestrians. That's a tragedy. So both the pedestrian road user and the driver, if they would simply drive with a bit more courtesy and care, we should be able to reduce the deaths from road accidents. So it looks at all of those areas. But then we're saying it's great. South Africans are quite good at words. We're quite good at conferences. We're quite good at declarations and accords and summits. But what we're trying to do is to shape a behavior where people don't look simply for the future to be secured by somebody else. The government must do. And we're trying to move away from the concept of a delivery state, where people seem to be waiting for the DHL van to arrive with a job, a house, a functioning school, a functioning clinic, to what I would call a developmental society, where people say, hey, the destiny is also in our own hands, and at least in our own community, we'll make sure the clinic does open on the right hours. We'll make sure it does have drugs as it's meant to. We'll make sure the school functions. We'll become friends of our local neighborhood school. If the roof needs fixing, we'll get the local hardware store to donate some stuff. We'll come with labor and we'll fix it.
South Africa seems to be in a difficult space right now, with much domestic and international negativity towards the country. What are your main hopes and fears for South Africa over the next 12 months? In a way, to stand back, South Africans firstly are really tough on themselves. We are very self-absorbed. We remind myself of sort of adolescent children at the worst moment when they think the world is entirely themselves. And so we
we think every problem we have is absolutely unique. I mean, corruption is a very real and serious problem in South Africa. It's not unique to South Africa. Crime is a very real problem. It's not in any way unique. We also, indeed, we are an adolescent society. You know, we're 19 years old as a democracy. And so, you know, I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for the progress that we've made. The South Africa that my daughters inhabit now, in the year of our Lord 2013, is so much better a place than the place I grew up in up until 1994. So firstly, I think we're too harsh, and we take too little credit for the progress that we have made. Then too, we are a very robust society. I mean, my family has got 3 daughters, and I have a wife, and they are all very strong women, they've got firm convictions about everything in life. And in our house, there are rowdy and robust debates. And South Africa's like that. I mean, we also, thank goodness, have competitive politics. We have free media. We have courts that work. People, by and large, feel confident enough to speak their minds and to be critical. What is true is that from time to time we go to that precipice where we seem to enjoy more fighting with each other than uniting against a common vision. Now we have the National Development Plan. This is the first long-term vision that South Africa has ever had in 300 years of its shared history. And that plan has got a vision of what South Africa could be like and should be like in 2013. You know, I hope increasingly that we can kind of join hands. You know, I learned in labor relations, I learned particularly, by the way, from James Motlatsi, that progress doesn't come about because you agree everything, you resolve every difference. Progress comes about by understanding that what you agree on is more important than what you disagree on, or even agreeing to bracket or separate the disagreements and work on the areas of agreement. I think South Africans have that capacity, and yes, these are tough times globally. For a long time, you know, people have been waiting for the revolution in South Africa, waiting for the bloodshed, waiting for the race civil war, and we've disappointed them up until now, and I hope we will carry on disappointing. In a small way, you know, I would hope that saying to 51 million South Africans, hey, take charge of your own life, decide on your own values, and find at least a small space of your life where you can live out those values, would set the scene for a more kind of constructive national discourse.
Thank you for your time. That was Bobby Godsell discussing the Active Citizens Charter.